In this video, I'm going to be making beef stroganoff served over egg noodles with steamed mixed vegetables. And you can make this whole meal for four for 10 to 11 bucks.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to be notified when there's new videos. Comments welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so first off, I'm going to start off by slicing up the meat and brining it, dry brining it. A little bit ahead of time, not too much. Now this meat I've had thawing, but it's still just frozen, so it's still a little bit solid, at least in the middle, and that makes it much easier to slice, especially thinly. Now you don't have to catch it at this point, or you can thaw it and then put it back in the freezer for a half hour or something, get it back so it's a little stiffer again. But it makes it so much easier. And I'm using, this is petite sirloin. It's about a pound, maybe a little more. I usually buy the petite sirloin bulk. You could also use, London broil or, of course, top sirloin is ideal. But some of this, the top sirloin is getting kind of pricey. So I like to use the petite sirloin for stuff like this. For this, and also beef stir fry, like beef broccoli or any of those kind of things, pepper steak. This petite sirloin works really well. The London broil is top round and it is pretty tough, and it's also very, really lean. You can see this has got actually some fat in it. So as long as you don't overcook this, it's actually pretty good. It's got good flavor and it comes out pretty tender. So. If you use London broil, you may want to, pressure cook it beforehand. For the beef stroganoff, or even like the stir fry and stuff, I like to have pretty thin, small pieces. Sometimes I like fajitas, I like them a little longer strips, just because that's what they usually do in the restaurant. But that's completely up to you, of course. Of course, you do want to be cutting this across the grain, but pretty much any way you're going to cut it is going to be across the grain here. And of course, usually when you buy the petite sirloin steaks like this, they're already cut across the grain the one way. So I also think this is quite a bit better than using like stew meat or something. Petite sirloin also works pretty well for like barbecues. If you're doing barbecue with a lot of people, because if you marinate this ahead of time, you marinate it for like a day, like say in just Italian dressing even. Something like that, and then grill it up and cut it into chunks, or like half pieces, half slices of the steak. It works out good. Not trying to cook to everybody's, doing that at a barbecue where it's like, oh, how do you want your steak? That's a pain for a lot of people. But doing this, you can grill. You can buy the big family packs and grill a whole bunch at once. In various levels of doneness if you want. But I find generally if you're doing that, you're probably going to get lots of different various levels of doneness anyway. Unless you're really watching them close. And I'm just going to put some kosher salt on these. And you want to do this brining, this dry brining. Just you put this salt on and it will absorb into the meat. So even though we may add some more, you may add more spices later, but you want to do the brining, the salting ahead of time, so it has time to absorb in, move towards the center. We don't need a lot of salt here because these chunks of meat are pretty thin. Now, if you've got the refrigerator space that you can just set this out, it is better to actually leave this uncovered, but I don't like it to contaminate anything else. I'm going to just put this in the regular refrigerator, and other people are going to be getting in there to get things out and stuff, so you don't want the raw meat, coming in contact with other things or with people. So, but if you do have the space, or you don't have any, kids around or anybody to mess with it, and actually doing it dry, without the covering on is better. gives us a little bit of that dry aging, especially if you do it like overnight. Of course, anytime you use cut meat or whatever, I like to make sure I clean the cutting board up, not good with soap and water. Same with the knife. Vegetables I'm not so concerned with, but I will usually at least rinse it off in between different things. Depends, sometimes you slice jalapenos on there and you don't want to get jalapeno juice all over other produce or things. So okay, so I'm going to get out the pans here. So I need a big skillet for the stroganoff, and then I'm also going to need a medium saucepan. And I'm going to use that same skillet to brown the meat as well as make the gravy. So we'll just need the 2 pans. Then I'm going to get the meat out here. It's getting close to time to start cooking it. Okay, so I'm just going to put some olive oil in the pan. Then I'm going to get that heating up. And I'm just going to set that on medium-high. And now I'm going to spice the meat a little bit more. Before I put the salt on, to brine it, which you can see is absorbed into there. It's gone now. And so I'm just going to do some pepper. You could do like some kind of steak seasoning or whatever you like. But I think for the stroganoff, we're going to have some other flavors in the gravy. It's going to have a thick gravy on it, so I don't think we really need any other flavors on the meat. Beef's got a pretty good flavor all by itself. Just a little salt and pepper. Grab my favorite wooden spatula. Okay, so the next thing we're going to need is some onions. I'm going to have some onions in the gravy. Onions and mushrooms. Actually, I'm going to have a lot of onions. I'm going to do a whole onion. And for stroganoff, instead of like a fine dice or a dice, I like to have long strips of onion in there. Now, normally I would use fresh mushrooms for this, but I forgot to buy them at the grocery store, so I'm just going to grab some of these canned mushrooms out of the pantry. I would be using 8 ounces of fresh mushrooms sliced. And that'll work out about the same. After the mushrooms cook down, of course, they get a little smaller. So I'll fill the pan up here to make the pasta. We'll get that ready. Okay, and then I'm going to add some kosher salt to the water. Not too much. Some people like to really go nuts in it. They want it to be like seawater. But I think that's about good. Now I'm not going to turn that on yet. I'm going to wait for a little bit. Next, I'm going to weigh out the pasta. And I'm going to be using extra wide egg noodles. Using 8 ounces. This also goes good over mashed potatoes, of course. Or you could do rice. I think egg noodles are more traditional. Alright, so the pan's getting hot enough. So what we want to do is we want to brown this, of course, and we want to cook it through, but mostly cook it through. But we don't want to overcook it. You got to be careful with like this petite sirloin. Top sirloin to be a little more forgiving. I'll just wash this plate so I can just reuse it to put it on. Because once we cook it, we're going to take it out. We don't want it to be cooking anymore in there after we get it where we want it. Until the end, we'll add it back in. Grab our special pasta spoon or pasta stirring spoon. Mostly it's for spaghetti, but it works good for the rest of it. Also grab the dish. I'm gonna steam the vegetables in the microwave. And this dish has a steam release in the center of it there, which is kind of handy for the vegetables. Because if it gets too much steam in there, it'll just pop open and release the steam. And then if you leave it sit in there a little bit and the steam condenses, and it sucks the lid down, and you can hit the release and be able to open it. So, start basic mixed vegetables. As we can see, the water's coming out of the beef. So before we can really get it to brown like we want, we have to let that evaporate off, and then you really want to just pull it pretty quick after that. So don't let it cook too much longer after that happens. So once the water's gone, it will start cooking quick. The pan will heat up pretty fast. So you can see the water's gone. So pretty much, still quite a bit of steam coming off. And when to stop cooking it is kind of a judgment call. You have to just get a little experience, but okay, now my beef broth is frozen, so I'm gonna thaw that out in some hot water in the sink here. And this is actually some Swanson's unsalted beef broth that we used half. Got bought a quart and used half of it before, so there's like 2 cups in there that we froze afterwards, so we don't end up throwing it away. So I'll just get some hot water and I'll fill that sink, start that thawing out. Now we don't need it fully thawed. We just need it thawed enough to come out of the container, and then we can thaw the rest of the way in the pan when we're making the gravy. Now we're getting some fond there, starting to get some good, that'll be some good flavor in the gravy. And the meat is pretty close to done here. Like I said, it's just a judgment call when to take it out. If you go too far, it will be too tough, and after you do this a few times, you'll figure out about when it seems like it's right, when it's done. It's probably getting done now, but I'm gonna, yeah. Okay. Then we'll take it out and put it on a plate. We don't want it to continue to cook in there too much. It will, of course, by itself just sitting there, but look at all that fond in there. Okay. Get us a little more oil, olive oil. We'll get the onions in. Of course, the pan is still hot, but I did turn off the heat until I get stuff going. I don't want that fond to get burnt or something. And I was cooking the meat, of course, on a medium high. I'll be cooking the onions on medium, or maybe a little bit lower. I don't want them to brown too much, so get it on a medium. There we go. Alright, I'm going to need some butter here, both for the vegetables and for the noodles. Now you only need the butter if you're going to serve the noodles separate, like I like to do. I like to have it so you can just get as much noodles as you want and put as much stroganoff on it as you want. But if you wanted to just mix the noodles in to the stroganoff gravy, then you can just do that and not need any butter or the parsley. Go ahead and get the mixed vegetables ready. Want to make sure you keep an eye on your onions. Don't want them to get burnt. Just want them to soften up a bit. They're a little dry, so I'm going to put a little more oil in there. The onions haven't released a whole lot of water yet, and it's not bringing the fond up, but we'll get when we get the broth in and stuff, we'll go get that up. We'll get the fond dissolved. Get the flour ready here to make the roux. This is going to be like a pretty standard basic gravy. Way we're going to do this here. And I really like these measuring spoons. They're pretty old. I don't know how where you find them anymore. They have magnets in them, so they all stick together. It's pretty slick. Okay, I'm going to go in with some garlic. I'm going to do like 3 to 4 cloves. This is basically a teaspoon per clove, and then 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. That's about 3 1/2, 4 cloves. Just want to cook that a little bit. especially if you're using fresh chopped up garlic. You want to cook that. I'm getting ready to add in the mushrooms, but I want to save the juice. I want to put that in the gravy too, to kind of make up for the juice that would have come out, or the, you know, when you cook down the mushrooms. Like I said, I would normally use fresh. I do like fresh better in the gravy, but this works fine. I always have these in the pantry just for cases like this, or if you just decide you want to make something, needs mushrooms in it. Alright, let's go ahead and start up on the roux. So for my basic gravy, I use about a 1/4 cup of flour, or that's about 4 tablespoons. And for this kind of gravy, you just like sprinkle it around on top of the onions and mushrooms and whatever you got in there. You want basically a 1/4 cup of fat and a 1/4 cup of flour, or maybe a little more flour if you like it a little thicker. And we've already got fat in there. I've already added fat several times, so we should be good to go on the fat. And then we just want to mix that around and give it a little cook. So you want to cook the raw taste out of the flour, which I don't usually notice much, but you just want to cook it a little bit. And also, of course, you want to get it mixed up. You want to mix it with the fat as good as you can, because we want to make the roux out of it, which is the fat and the flour, to help our emulsion for the gravy. So it'll all be suspended nicely and make nice creamy gravy. Like I was saying, for my basic gravy, I have a 1/4 cup of fat, a 1/4 cup of flour, and then 2 cups of broth or water, and then a cup of cream or milk or something. In this case, since it's stroganoff, we're going to use sour cream. You can also just use a can of cream soup as well. So here's our beef broth. As you can see, it's not totally thawed, but that'll be okay. We'll melt it there in the pan. Now that we've got that in there, we can start working on that, getting that fond off the bottom, getting that all dissolved. We don't need to worry about the fond too much yet. It'll give it a little time, a little heat with the water in there now, with the broth. It'll come up. Throw in our mushroom juice. And now that recipe for the stroganoff does call for some a little bit of white wine. So you can do that. You could add extra broth or extra water, or you could use some like half water, half vinegar, like a white wine vinegar, or a red wine vinegar. Either way, you can use red wine if you want. The other thing in the gravy is okay, there's the sour cream, but the Dijon mustard. That adds some flavor, but it also helps in the emulsion. So you'll see a lot of gravies have that. And then we're also going to add some Worcestershire sauce for flavor, of course. As you can see, of course, that broth is melting down nicely. And we're going to want to bring that up to kind of a high simmer so that it'll thicken up. Okay, we're going to get the pasta water going now. Salt's all dissolved. So. And I got that on that fast boil burner, so it'll bring it up to a boil real quick. Pretty quick. Of course, sour cream is the main ingredient in stroganoff that makes it stroganoff. Gives it that tangy flavor. Makes the gravy creamier, of course. I think you could also get away with using some Greek yogurt. but I haven't ever tried that. Now we got it going pretty good. Turn that down a bit. From this point, we're just going to want to simmer the gravy. The fond's pretty much come off the bottom now. It's hard to tell, of course, from the camera here. Just season it up a bit. Give it a taste. See how much salt I need. I'm using unsalted broth, so I'm going to be adding, a bit to get it up to where I like it. If you use the regular broth, not low sodium or unsalted, then you won't need much salt probably, if at all. Not too bad. It needs to be a bit thicker. Now, of course, when we put the sour cream in, that's going to thicken it up some too. It's going to get thicker as it cooks. Okay, get the meat back in there. Got to get that warming back up. Again, we just want to warm it now. We don't want to cook it too much again. So you want to wait till near the end. And of course, when you're putting that in, you want to make sure you get any juice that may come off of there. Now that the sauce is thicker, you can actually see down to the bottom of the pan and see the fond is gone. It's been all dissolved and absorbed into the gravy. And the wooden spatula is perfect for just scraping that a little bit, because it won't scratch your pan. And it's nice and stiff. Water's boiling. Get our pasta in. Give it a little stir. Get everything under the water. Should set a timer here for our pasta. Of course, just cook it for the package directions of whatever pasta you bought. We'll get our vegetables in the microwave. And I like to cook them about half the total time they like on the package. And then I'll mix in butter and spices and then put it back in for the other half. Okay, time for the sour cream. You don't want to add this in too early. You don't want to take a chance of it curdling or separating. So just at the end, when you're just kind of sitting there simmering, keeping it warm, that's a good time to put it in. You want to have enough time, of course, to warm it up, because oftentimes it's kind of cold, and of course get it stirred in. And as I said, the sour cream is what gives stroganoff its signature flavor. So it's ready to serve now. All we're waiting on is the noodles and the vegetables. Okay, so we're halfway cooking the vegetables. I'll add in the butter, just 2 or 3 tablespoons, and some salt and pepper. Or you could use like a Mrs. Dash that I've been using lately, but just going for salt and pepper today. And we'll put those back in the microwave for the rest of the time. And I should tell you that the reason I cook them halfway like that is if sometimes when you cook them, they release water, and there'll be a bunch of water in the bottom of the dish. So at halfway point, you can dump out the water, and then you add in the butter. So that way it's not diluting the butter. It's not watering down the butter. Okay, so let's test this pasta and see if it's done. Okay, so not quite, I think. Let it go for a little bit longer. All right, I'm done waiting. It's good enough. Drain that off good. Then we're going to go back right into the same pan. You could go into a serving bowl if you want, but we're just going to serve it from here. I'm going to mix in the butter. We'll let that melt in there in the hot noodles. I'll just pull it off the burner a bit because the burner is still pretty hot. I don't want to cook this down to the bottom. So now we're going some dried parsley. Fresh parsley would be better, but I usually forget to get it. And this just adds a little color to the noodles since we're serving them separate. So what you could do at this point is just dump, before you don't put any butter in, don't put any parsley in, just put the noodles into the stroganoff gravy and mix it up. Serve it that way. It seems like a lot of people like to go light on the carbs, so this way they have a choice. They can have as much or as little noodles as they want. And I just always want to stir it up again. I want to make sure we get any, like there's a film on the top. We want to mix that back in. Nothing worse than gravy. It's got a thick film on the top that's formed. And can't forget our vegetables. Give them a little stir. Let the steam out first, of course. Or yeah. Okay, so our little mini buffet here. We got our beef stroganoff gravy, our egg noodles with butter and parsley, and our steamed mixed vegetables. Alright, so I'll get me a plate. Fill it up, get a bunch of noodles. Bunch of gravy, of course. Lovely chunks of steak in there. Some classic mixed vegetables. Doesn't that look good? Nice comfort food. Grab a chunk of steak here. Yeah, nice and tender. There we go. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to be notified when new videos become available.